Austin, on a warm Friday night, felt like a city exhaling after a long week, and the Rusty Lantern was the place where that breath turned into laughter music and a little chaos. Lila Hart pushed open the wooden door with her friends at her side, still trying to shake off the sting of the contract cancellation that had knocked the wind out of her just 2 days before. She was 25 with a fresh degree in interior design and a dream of finally proving herself at Cowan and Gray. But that morning her supervisor had told her the firm was downsizing their junior positions. She had spent the entire day forcing herself to smile through the disappointment until Madison declared that a night out was mandatory. The Rusty Lantern was a bar where old country blends with soft jazz and fairy lights wrapped around ceiling beams made everything glow like a small universe. Lila walked in, trying to look cheerful, while her chest felt tight. The girls found a booth near the stage, ordered drinks. Then Madison slammed her palm on the table and announced that they were playing Truth or Dare like old college days. The group agreed, and laughter rose around the booth until it was Lila's turn. Madison leaned forward, eyes shining with trouble. "All right, Lila, truth or dare?" Lila raised a brow. "If I say truth, you're just going to make me confess something embarrassing. And if you say dare," Madison shot back, "you might actually forget your stress for 5 seconds." Lila sighed. "Fine, dare." The table erupted in cheers. Madison pointed across the bar. "Him." Lila followed the direction of her finger and felt the breath knock out of her chest. A man sat alone at the far end of the bar, shoulders broad posture, absolutely still like he commanded the space without trying. He wore a dark shirt open just enough at the collar to hint at the shape of him, and his black hair fell slightly over his forehead as if he had run a hand through it too many times. What struck Lila most was that he did not smile, did not react, did not talk to anyone. He just listened to the soft jazz like the world outside did not matter. Madison whispered, "The most serious man in the bar. Go kiss him 3 seconds." Lila choked on her drink. "Are you insane? He looks like he fires people for fun." Her friends laughed. "Come on, Lila. You need adrenaline. And look at him, he is not surrounded by anyone. Easiest dare ever." Lila looked again. Something about him felt familiar, though she could not place why. Maybe a face she had seen in passing, maybe a resemblance to an actor. But no, she realized the familiarity was not visual. It was in the energy and the stillness that seemed to pull at her like gravity. She felt her pulse at her throat. Madison counted, 1, 2, do it. Lila groaned, slapped her hands over her cheeks and stood. "Fine, but if I get murdered, it is on you." She crossed the bar, weaving between tables until she stood behind the man, terrified he would suddenly stand and tower over her. But he did not move. He seemed deep in the jazz guitar riff, almost too absorbed to notice her. Lila touched his shoulder lightly. He turned his head and his eyes met hers. Calm, dark, unreadable. For half a second she almost backed away, but pride pushed her forward. She leaned in, pressed her lips quickly against his cheek, then against his mouth in a soft, almost apologetic kiss. 1, 2, 3. He did not flinch. He did not gasp. He did not blink. He just looked at her like he had been waiting for her all night. Heat shot through her and panic followed instantly. She whispered, "Sorry, dare," and practically ran back toward her friends with her heart beating like a trapped bird. Her friends screamed in delight as she slid into the booth. Lila covered her face, mortified. "I cannot believe I just kissed a stranger." Madison laughed. "You kissed a statue." He did not even move. Lila risked a glance over her shoulder. The man was not at the bar anymore. She exhaled with relief until she reached the door to step outside for air. The warm Texas breeze brushed her skin and she closed her eyes, trying to calm her heartbeat. Then she heard it. A low voice right behind her, calm, steady, almost amused. "Next time, do not run." Lila froze. She turned slowly. He stood a few feet away, half in shadow, half in the glow of the neon sign above the door. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes held a strange awareness, like he saw something in her she did not understand yet. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. He gave the faintest nod, then walked past her toward the waiting SUV parked at the curb. The driver opened the door and bowed slightly. The man stepped inside without another word, but just before the door shut, he looked at her again. That look hit her like a pulse. As the SUV rolled away, Lila pressed her palm against her chest, trying to steady herself. She had kissed a stranger on a dare, yet the way he looked at her was not the look of a stranger at all. It was the look of someone who recognized her. Her heart thudded with a frightening new thought. Who was he? She did not know that the answer would change her entire life. The moment Lila stepped back inside the rusty lantern, her friends were still laughing about the dare, but the ringing in her ears drowned them out. Her skin buzzed like static, like the stranger's voice had wrapped itself around her nerves. Next time, do not run. Who talked like that to a girl he had never met? Who reacted to an unexpected kiss without even blinking? She tried to shake it off, but curiosity ate at her until she walked to the bar to order water, hoping the bartender might know something. When he handed her the glass, he leaned in with a knowing expression. "You must be brave," he said. She blinked. "Why?" "Because you walked up to him. Most people here will not even step near him." Lila frowned. "Do you know him?" The bartender shook his head slowly. "Not really. But he is a regular, and he is always by himself, always quiet. The place hushes when he shows up. He is that type of guy. Not in a scary way, just in a presence way, like everyone suddenly remembers their manners." Lila shivered. "So nobody knows what he does for a living?" "Nope. No social media either. A ghost in a nice shirt." Lila let out a nervous laugh, but the comment about presence stuck with her. It explained why her chest had tightened the second she saw him, even before the dare. Something about him felt bigger than the room itself. She rejoined her friends, attempting to act normal, but every few minutes her thoughts drifted back to that SUV, and the driver who bowed like the man he drove was someone important, or dangerous, or both. After a while, the crowd in the bar thickened and the group moved outside for fresh air. The Texas night was warm with a soft hum of traffic and distant laughter from 6th Street. Lila hugged her arms around herself, absorbing the air, trying to reset. As her friends chatted, she turned her head instinctively toward the curb where the SUV had been. Empty. But something tugged at her attention. At the corner, under a street lamp, 2 men in dark clothing stood beside a parked car, not talking, not laughing, not doing anything that made sense at a bar district. They were simply waiting. Lila felt a prickling down her spine. One of the men glanced at his phone, then looked toward the bar entrance exactly where she stood. She startled and turned back to her group, quickly pretending she had seen nothing. Her friend Sierra nudged her. "You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." Lila managed a thin smile. "Just tired. Too much adrenaline from doing something stupid." Madison chimed in proudly. "Not stupid. Epic." But Lila barely heard her. She could not shake the sense that the man she kissed lived in a different orbit than ordinary people, and now she had stepped too close. After an hour, the group decided to head home. They walked to the parking lot and split off into different ride shares. Lila opted to walk a few blocks to clear her mind before ordering hers. The night felt calmer away from the bar, and she breathed deeper as she turned down Red River Street. Then she heard footsteps behind her, not fast, not slow, just steady. Lila glanced back and saw a dark sedan creeping along the curb. Her stomach dropped. She picked up her pace. The car matched her. Panic surged through her chest, and she broke into a near jog until a shadow stepped out from behind a vending machine near a convenience store entrance. A hand closed gently around her wrist, pulling her inside just as the sedan sped up. A soft chime rang as the door shut behind them, and bright fluorescent light filled the small shop. Lila gasped and spun around, only to find herself face to face with him. The man from the bar. His expression was unreadable, but there was something fierce in the way he looked at her, like he was calculating a threat, and she was the variable he needed to secure. "You should not walk alone this late," he said. His voice was low, but not unkind, more protective than scolding. Lila struggled to find words. Were they following you or me? He paused, and that silence scared her more than an answer would have. "They are not my men," he finally said. Her breath quickened. "I did not ask that. You implied it." She flushed because he was right. She had assumed he had people following him. Was that normal for someone who drank alone in a bar? The man studied her face like he could see every rapid thought racing through her. "You will stay here for a minute," he said. Then he glanced through the glass door at the empty street. The sedan was nowhere in sight. Once he was sure the area was clear, he stepped back toward her. "You can go now. I will walk with you until you call a ride." Lila blinked. "Why are you doing this?" He did not answer right away. The air between them felt charged the same electric pull as earlier. Finally he said, "Because you kissed me, and now some people will take that the wrong way." Lila gaped. What does that even mean? He ignored the question and opened the door for her. The street outside was quiet again, but she stayed close to him because her instincts told her it was the safest place to be. They walked side by side, though he kept half a step behind her like he was guarding her back. When they reached the main intersection, he spoke again. "From now on, when you are outside, I will know." Lila froze. How? Why? She looked at him as the red glow of the traffic light cut across his face, making him look both human and impossibly distant. "Why would you need to know where I am?" The light turned green and he stepped forward, but his voice reached her with a softness that made her chest tighten. "Because tonight, you became part of something you do not understand yet." Then, he walked her to a safe spot, waited until her ride arrived, and watched her get in. As the car pulled away, Lila looked out the window at him standing under the street lamp, calm, unreadable, and undeniably connected to a world she had never imagined touching. She whispered into the dark car ceiling, "Who are you?" She did not know that the answer was waiting just around the corner, and it was bigger than anything she was prepared for. Monday morning came too quickly for Lila, and she walked into Cowan and Gray with a coffee in hand and a silent prayer that she would get through the day without replaying the kiss or the stranger or the sedan or the haunting sentence. "From now on, when you are outside, I will know." She convinced herself she had imagined the intensity of everything. People in Austin were eccentric. Bars were unpredictable. Maybe she had read too much into it. She tried to bury the memory beneath her work, but the office was buzzing with news the moment she stepped inside. Her supervisor, Gail, called out, "We have a new project, everyone conference room in 2. Lila hurried in with the rest of the design team. The mood was electric, the kind of excitement that only happened when a huge client walked in the door. Gail smiled with the thrill of someone who loved big reveals. "We have been selected for a concept proposal for Blackwell Empire." Lila nearly dropped her pen. Blackwell Empire was a giant in real estate and tech, a name she had heard her entire life. They owned towers, mixed-use districts, and half the luxury developments in Texas. Winning even a concept pitch would stabilize the studio for the next year. Gail passed out packets. "We will tour their downtown tower today. The executive team wants fresh eyes, and they specifically asked for a full panel, which means even our junior designers, meaning you are coming too, Lila." Lila Ais' stomach tightened. She did not know why her pulse jumped at the mention of Blackwell, but something about the name scratched at her memory. When the team arrived at the Blackwell Tower, the lobby alone was intimidating, a fusion of marble glass and steel lines flowing like a futuristic cathedral. Security checked badges and escorted them toward the private elevators. Lila walked with her sketchbook held tight to her chest, trying to stay professional, while her mind tugged at the strange sense of familiarity the night at the bar had left behind. The elevator doors slid open on the 52nd floor, and the team stepped into a minimalist lounge overlooking all of Austin. And he was there. Standing with his hands behind his back, posture, perfect gaze out toward the skyline as if he owned the entire horizon. The man from the bar, the man from the street, the man who spoke like he saw through her. The world narrowed to a point of shocking clarity. He turned slowly, and his eyes locked onto hers immediately, not on Gail, not on the senior designer, not on the company rep, but on her. Lila felt the breath leave her lungs. He looked different in daylight, Sharper, more refined, with the quiet authority of someone used to making decisions that affected thousands of people. His shirt was crisp, his presence colder, more controlled than at the bar. For a fleeting moment she wondered if he would pretend not to know her. Instead, he spoke directly to her across the silent room, his voice steady. "Last time you ran." Lila felt every colleague's head swivel toward her in confusion. Heat flooded her cheeks. She forced her voice to work. "I did not run. I walked very, very fast." A few people chuckled, unsure whether they were allowed to laugh. The man's lips curved by 1 millimeter, hardly a smile but enough to send a breathless shiver through her. Gail stepped forward, clearing her throat. "Mr. Blackwell, thank you for having us. We are honored to design for your team." Lila nearly stumbled. "Mr. Blackwell?" The name hit her like a blow. Ethan Blackwell. The heir, the man who disappeared from media 5 years ago. The man tied to a billion-dollar empire. The man she had kissed on a dare. She stared at him desperately, hoping no one could hear her mental screaming. Ethan nodded to the group, though his gaze kept drifting back to her like an involuntary compass. "Let us walk. I will show you the levels requiring redesign." They moved as a group through a glass corridor. Gail whispered to Lila. "You know him?" Lila nearly choked. "No. Yes. No, not really." Gail narrowed her eyes but said nothing more. In the next room, Ethan explained projected plans and technological integrations with a commanding clarity that made every designer stand straighter just listening. But then, something happened that unsettled Lila even more than his presence. On the mezzanine above them, a man in a hoodie lifted a phone, angling it downward to capture Ethan's face. Before Lila could even react, one of the building security guards moved with frightening speed, intercepting the stranger and seizing the phone. The intruder protested, claiming he was a tourist. Ethan barely looked up, but his jaw tightened by a fraction. It was small, but Lila noticed. He noticed her noticing, and their eyes met again for a second too long. She felt her pulse race. After the walkthrough, the team gathered for coffee with Blackwell's staff. Ethan did not join them at first, but halfway through their meeting he stepped into the lounge and addressed her team, though his attention remained tethered to one singular place. He said, "I appreciate your fresh perspective. We value honesty more than flattery at Blackwell." Then, looking directly at Lila, he added, "Some people offer honesty without being asked." Lila almost dropped her cup. Her team exchanged curious glances. Ethan walked closer. His expression returned to neutral, but his voice held a weight meant only for her. "If you have questions, ask. I am not difficult to approach." Lila whispered, "I am pretty sure I approached you too much the other night." A faint flicker of amusement touched his eyes again. "That depends on how you look at it." Her heart hammered against her ribs. She stood to leave before she humiliated herself further. As she passed him, he leaned slightly closer, speaking quietly so only she could hear. "If you want to run now, I will let you," she whispered back. "I am not running." "Good." His gaze softened just a breath. "Because we have unfinished business." The tension wrapped around her like a warm electric current, and she did not know whether she should be afraid or impossibly drawn. When the team left the building, Lila stepped into the sunlight feeling as though the world had tilted beneath her feet. The billionaire, who should not know she existed, not only noticed her, but looked at her like he had been waiting for her to step back into his life, and she had no idea what that meant. For the rest of the afternoon, Lila moved through the studio like a ghost trapped between two realities. The familiar world of design boards and material samples, and the other world, the one that belonged to Ethan Blackwell, a world that had brushed against her twice in one weekend and left a mark deep enough that she could feel it under her skin. By the time she reached her apartment that evening, her mind was a tangle of questions she could not unravel. Why had he remembered her so clearly? Why had he spoken to her like they had history? And more unsettling than anything, why did she feel as if she had stepped into something dangerous simply by being in the same building as him? She dropped her keys and tried to breathe. A notification pinged on her phone. Gail had sent a message, "The Blackwell team wants us back tomorrow. Full day, be ready." Lila groaned and fell onto the couch, covering her face with a pillow. She could not face him again so soon. Or maybe she could, but that was the problem. The next morning she arrived early to the office, hoping to gather her thoughts before the whirlwind began, but as she walked in she noticed coworkers whispering in small groups. When she approached, they straightened quickly, pretending to talk about floor plans. She wondered if they had sensed the strange tension yesterday. Or worse, if someone had told them. When the team gathered for the Blackwell visit, Lila kept her head down, trying to appear composed. But the moment they arrived at the tower, something felt different. More security guards stood near the entrance. 2 men wearing discreet communication earpieces scanned every visitor. Lila followed the team through the metal detectors and up the elevator when she noticed a reflection in the mirrored panel. A man in a suit stood near the corner of the lobby watching her. Not the group, just her. The elevator doors closed and she tried to shake it off, but unease twisted in her stomach. On the 52nd floor, Ethan was already waiting, but not alone. 3 men in black suits stood behind him. His posture was the same as before, calm, measured, but there was a tightness around his eyes that had not been there yesterday. As the team approached, he dismissed the guards with a quiet gesture. They stepped back, but did not disappear entirely. Lila felt the pressure of their presence even when she did not see them. Ethan guided the team through workspaces, but his attention kept drifting to her, whenever she moved, whenever she spoke, whenever she merely existed in the same room. She pretended not to notice yet. Every time she lifted her head, their eyes met. And each time, something flickered in his expression, something too raw to fit the cold billionaire image he carried. During a break, the team split off to review samples. Lila excused herself and walked toward the small refreshment area. She reached for a cup, but her hands trembled slightly. She whispered to herself, "Get it together." A deep voice behind her responded directly, unexpectedly. "You are already together more than anyone in this building." Lila jumped. Ethan stood so close she could feel the warmth of him like a gravitational field. She turned slowly, her heart pounding. "You should not sneak up on people," she said. "I did not sneak," he replied. "You simply did not hear me." She stared at him. "Do you always talk in riddles?" "Only when someone interests me." Her breath caught. Ethan continued. "I noticed something yesterday. Whenever you are unsure, you tap your thumb against your palm." Lila tensed because she had not realized she was doing that exact motion. His gaze lowered briefly to her hand, then lifted back to her face, holding a softness edged with something darker. "Tell me," he said, and the words were quiet but firm. "Why did you kiss me?" She swallowed. "I told you. Dare." He tilted his head, no longer buying her excuses. People do not cross a room full of strangers and kiss someone who terrifies them unless part of them already wants to. Heat flamed across her cheeks. She forced her voice steady. "You think I wanted to kiss you?" He held her gaze. "I think you were drawn to me before you realized it, and I think you are more afraid of what that means than of me." She could not answer because a knock interrupted the moment. A security guard stepped inside and spoke directly to Ethan. The west entrance camera picked up a tail again. "Same vehicle as last night." Lila stiffened. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Increase the perimeter," he said. "No mistakes." As the guard left, Lila felt her heartbeat thrum louder. "You are being followed," she said. Ethan looked at her, and for a second the mask slipped. He looked tired, worn, human. It happens when you inherit enemies with your company. Lila froze, shocked. He said it so simply, as if it were an ordinary fact. He continued. "They watch everything. Every move, every conversation, every person I stand near." She inhaled slowly. "Then why are you standing near me?" "Because you make me forget they are there." Her breath caught again. Ethan stepped a fraction closer, not touching her, but close enough for her pulse to trip. "You ask why people follow me," he murmured, "but the real question is why you saw them before anyone else. You notice things. You look beyond the surface. Most people never do. She felt suddenly exposed, seen in a way that was unnervingly intimate. Before she could respond, Gail called out for the team to regroup. Lila stepped back grateful for space, but Ethan S.'s voice followed her the way his eyes did. Later, he said, "We are not finished." They spent the rest of the afternoon walking through the unfinished floors. At one point, Lila slipped on a loose plastic sheet and stumbled forward. Before she could hit the ground, Ethan caught her one arm around her waist, pulling her upright with reflexes too fast for someone who claimed to live in boardrooms. Their breath mingled. Her hands pressed against his chest instinctively. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Careful. I would hate to see you hurt." She pushed back, gently flustered, and he let her go immediately, his hands falling away as though he refused to keep her longer than she allowed. After the tour, the team met for coffee again. Leela sat at the far end, hoping for distance, but she could feel Ethan's presence even from across the room. He finished a conversation with two advisors, then crossed the lounge toward her, walking with the kind of quiet authority that made people move out of his way without realizing it. He stopped beside her table and spoke in that low, steady tone that unraveled her composure. "Yesterday, you kissed me without knowing who I was. Today, you look at me like you know too much and not enough at the same time." She looked up slowly, trying to mask her racing pulse. "What does that even mean?" Ethan studied her for a moment as though weighing what he wanted to reveal. "It means he said that you see the man under everything else. The one who lives in shadows. The one no one else bothers to notice." Her breath stilled. Before she could respond, he stepped back, allowing distance again, respecting a boundary she had not voiced aloud. Then he said quietly, but with certainty, "And I notice you, more than I should." The team packed their things, preparing to leave. As Lila walked toward the elevator, she could feel his gaze following her. Not possessive, not predatory, but searching. As the doors closed, she exhaled shakily, pressing her hand against her racing heart. She had stepped into his shadows without meaning to, and somehow she sensed the deeper she went, the harder it would be to walk back into the light. Lila left the Blackwell Tower that evening with her pulse still thudding unevenly and her mind unable to settle. The sun was slipping behind the Austin skyline, painting the glass buildings gold, but instead of feeling calm, she felt watched not by Ethan, but by the shadows he lived with, the ones he had mentioned so effortlessly. Enemies that came with the empire he inherited. She walked a few blocks before ordering a ride, wanting air, wanting clarity, wanting distance from the intensity that clung to her whenever he stood too close. But as she waited at the corner, she noticed something that made her breath catch. A black sedan, the same style she had seen the night he pulled her into the convenience store, rolled slowly down the street, its windows tinted too dark for Austin standards. Lila swallowed and told herself it was coincidence. Big cities had black cars everywhere. But when she stepped across the street, the sedan changed lanes and matched her pace again. A cold wave rolled through her. She turned down a side street, hoping to lose the feeling, but the car turned too, following her with eerie patience. Her heartbeat thudded painfully in her ears. She reached for her phone, her fingers trembling, but before she could even unlock it, someone stepped out from behind a parked truck, grabbed her arm, and pulled her sharply into the narrow space between two buildings. Lila gasped, ready to scream, until a voice cut through the panic, steady and unmistakable. Quiet. It was him. Ethan. She froze breathless as he guided her deeper into the shadowed space, his hand steady on her wrist. Not rough, not forceful, just firm enough to keep her out of sight. The sedan passed the intersection slowly, then picked up speed and disappeared. Only then did Ethan release her and step back, though the tension in his body remained coiled like a wire pulled tight. Lila pressed a hand to her chest. "Why are they following me?" Ethan shook his head. "No, they are following me, and you happen to be where they should not see you." She stared at him, shocked, unable to understand the weight of his words. "What do they want?" He looked away for a moment, jaw clenched the way it had tightened yesterday in the tower when the man tried to take photos. "Control," he said. "Or chaos. Depends on the day. that made absolutely no sense to her. None. "If someone is watching you, why show up here?" she whispered, voice shaky. "Why come out into public without guards?" He gave a faint humorless exhale because staying hidden makes it look like they are winning, and I do not hide. Not from them. Not anymore. His eyes lifted to hers, and this time something softer flashed through the hardness. "But you should not be near any of it." Lila felt panic and anger and confusion swirl inside her. She stepped back from him a little. "Then, stop pulling me into it." For the first time since she met him, Ethan flinched almost imperceptibly. "I did not intend for you to be pulled into anything." Lila crossed her arms, hugging herself against the night air. "Then what happened at the bar? What happened last night? Why are people tailing you? Why do you talk like every word has a secret behind it?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Because there is." She stared at him, waiting for him to elaborate. He did not. Instead, he glanced toward the street, ensuring it was clear, then guided her out of the alley with that same protective awareness. They walked silently until they reached a brighter block, and only then did he speak again, quieter this time. "When you walked outside the bar that night, something changed. You do not understand how much attention a single moment can draw when people want leverage." "Leverage," she repeated. "Over you." His eyes met hers, and she felt that familiar shock of intensity she could never brace for. Yes. She swallowed hard. And why would kissing you give them leverage? Before answering, he studied her as if deciding how much truth she could handle. "Because they think anyone I look at is someone they can use against me." Lila's breath hitched. "You looked at me." He did not even blink. "I still am." Heat rushed to her face, but fear was tangled with the flutter. "This is not normal," she whispered. "None of this is normal." He nodded. "It is not. Which is why I am telling you to be more careful." She shook her head. "Careful of what?" "The people who just followed you. The people watching your building. The people watching me." Her knees threatened to weaken. "Watching my building." Ethan held her gaze with steady certainty. "Yes. They were outside last night." His voice gentled instantly when he saw the alarm rise in her eyes. "You were not in danger. They were there to see if I showed up again." Lila felt cold all over. Why would I be part of this at all? His answer came with a weight that pressed into her chest. "Because when you kissed me, you became visible in ways you were not meant to be." She blinked rapidly, fighting the swirl of fear and disbelief. "This is ridiculous. I am nobody to them." Ethan's voice deepened. "You are not nobody to me." Her breath caught painfully at that, but before she could respond, he added, "They will not touch you, not while I am still breathing." It should have comforted her, but instead the seriousness of his tone made the danger feel more real. He stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the charge between them again. "I will walk you home." She did not argue. They walked together through the quiet streets, the tension thick but different now, threaded with awareness and something deeper that scared her, because it felt dangerously like trust. When they reached her apartment, he stayed a few feet back, respect evident even in his posture. Lila hesitated at the steps, turning slightly toward him. "You keep showing up," she whispered. He answered simply, "I told you. From now on, when you are outside, I will know." She swallowed the shiver that ran down her spine. Half fear, half something she could not name. She stepped inside, but before closing the door, she glanced at him one last time. He stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by the glow of the street lamp, watching her with an expression she could not decipher. Protective, tired, drawn, and buried beneath it all something that looked like a warning. She closed the door slowly, heart pounding. Unsure whether she wanted distance from him or wanted to step closer to the danger he carried like a shadow. She whispered into the darkness, "Who are you really?" But she already feared the answer. Whoever he was not just a stranger, and he was not done with her. Lila barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the black sedan sliding through the night, the shadowed alleyway, Ethan pulling her out of sight as if danger were a current around them. By morning, her thoughts were a tangled mess of fear, curiosity, and an ache she refused to name. At the studio, she tried to dive into work, but concentration slipped through her fingers. She opened design software, stared at the blank layout, and all she could see was his face, the unreadable calm, the quiet intensity, the certainty with which he said they were watching your building. She rubbed her temples and whispered to herself, "You are imagining half of this." But deep down, she knew she was not. By noon, Gail called the team into her office. The Blackwell executives requested an additional consultation today. Lila S.'s stomach dropped. She was not ready to see him again, but backing out would only raise questions she could not answer. The team returned to the Blackwell Tower, and the moment they stepped inside, Lila felt the tension humming in the air like invisible static. Security felt tighter. More eyes, more surveillance, more shadows. In the elevator, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her face looked pale, uncertain. When the doors opened, Ethan was waiting again, standing beside a long table covered in construction drafts. But this time his expression was not neutral. It was unreadable in a different way, as if he had been expecting her specifically, and everything around them was merely background noise. He gestured for the team to approach. "I need to show you all something." His voice was clipped-controlled, but his gaze brushed over her with the same intensity that made her pulse trip. As the team gathered, Ethan walked them through design conflicts between old floor plans and proposed new layouts. He was sharp, precise, almost mechanical in his efficiency. But when Lila asked a question about natural lighting in one wing, he turned to her fully, and something in his eyes softened like a curtain briefly lifted. After the presentation, Gail and the others reviewed specs on the far side of the room. Lila drifted near the large window, trying to steady her nerves. She needed clarity, answers, distance. Instead, she got Ethan standing beside her without a sound. "You have questions," he said. She did not look at him. "You think?" A faint hint of amusement touched the corner of his mouth. "You are not good at hiding them." She inhaled slowly, keeping her gaze fixed on the skyline. "I need to understand something. It is impossible for anyone in your position to have no public presence. No interviews, no social footprint, no photos. It is not normal." He was silent long enough to make her chest tighten. Then he said, "You are right. It is not normal." She turned to look at him fully. "Then why?" His jaw flexed. "Because I removed myself from everything 5 years ago." Lila blinked, confusion thickening. "Removed yourself? From what?" "From the world. The media. My company. Everything." She stared at him, stunned. "Why would you disappear? Why would a billionaire walk away from everything?" He looked past her toward the glass, his reflection stark in the window. "Because staying in the light costs too many people too much." She frowned, deepening. "That does not answer anything." He turned his gaze back to hers, and the weight of it made her take a small, involuntary step back. "There was an incident, a scandal. Someone inside the company used my name to push through illegal acquisitions. When I reported it, the board retaliated. They fed lies to the media, leaked stories. My family name was dragged through investigations. People got hurt." Lila whispered, "Hurt how?" He shook his head. "That is not the part I'm willing to share yet." Her breath thinned. "You disappeared to protect people." He nodded once. "And by staying quiet, I kept the real targets safe. But it gave the board power they did not deserve, and now they want more." "So you returned." He held her gaze steadily. "And my return is threatening people who were comfortable in the shadows. That is why you are being watched." The room spun a little, and she gripped the window ledge. "I am not part of your world. I should not be anywhere near this." Ethan stepped closer, but still gave her space, his voice quieter now, heavy with a truth he had not said before. "You were the first person to look at me without expecting something. Without fear, without flattery, without strategy. Just a woman who crossed a room because her friends dared her." She flushed, remembering the kiss. He continued, "You are not the danger, Lila. You are the clarity, and that makes some people nervous." Her pulse hammered erratically. She wanted to deny it, but something about the way he said her name made resistance collapse. Still, she whispered, "Why tell me this? Why trust me?" He exhaled, long, slow, like the truth cost him something. "Because you asked. And because if you are near me, you deserve to understand the risks." Her voice tightened. "What risks, exactly?" He studied her expression carefully before speaking. "The people trying to control the company want leverage. Anyone I show interest in becomes a target." Her breath caught. Interest. He nodded, without hesitation, yes. The single word dropped between them, heavy and electric. She backed up one step, overwhelmed, but he did not follow. He stayed rooted, letting her have distance, letting her breathe. He continued softly, "You see the man under the empire. No one has done that in years. And it is why I cannot pretend you are just a stranger I met in a bar." She stared at him for a long, suspended moment, feeling something unnameable expanding in her chest, something that frightened her more than the sedan, more than the shadows, more than the men watching the tower. Ethan Blackwell was looking at her like she was the only real thing in his fractured world, and she did not know if she was strong enough to handle the weight of that. She whispered one more question, her voice barely steady. "Who are you to them?" Ethan answered in a quiet, steady tone that sent a chill down her spine. "To the world, I am the heir who vanished. To the board, I am the obstacle they want gone. To the people in the shadows, I am the threat they cannot control." He paused. "But to you, I am the man you kissed without knowing why." She swallowed hard, unable to speak. Then he added more softly, more human than she had ever seen him. "And the man who felt something shift the moment you did." Her heartbeat thudded painfully. The truth was too big, too heavy, too impossible. She stepped away, needing air, needing distance, needing something stable to hold on to. Ethan did not stop her. He only watched her with that same steady, unreadable intensity and said the words that wrapped around her like a vow and a warning all at once. "Whatever happens next, you are not alone in it." She stood there trembling because the truth he had shown her was not something she could unsee. And the man who lived in shadows had just pulled her into them. That night, the city felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself knew something was breaking open inside her. Lila tried to go home, tried to busy her hands with dishes and laundry and noise, but every quiet moment pulled her thoughts back to Ethan, back to the truth he had revealed, back to the shadows he walked through like they were familiar hallways. By 9 o'clock, she gave up pretending she could sleep. She stepped onto her apartment balcony, staring out at the stretch of Austin lights. The silence only made the questions louder. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated before answering. A familiar voice slipped through the speaker, low, steady, unmistakably him. "Are you home?" She tightened her grip on the railing. "Yes." "Why?" A beat of silence, then Ethan said, "I need to see you." Her heart stumbled. "Is something wrong?" Another pause. "Everything and nothing. Can I come up?" She should have said no. She should have protected herself, her job, her sanity, but the truth was she had crossed that line the night she kissed him, and he had crossed it back tenfold. She whispered yes before she could stop herself. 10 minutes later, a knock sounded through her apartment. When she opened the door, Ethan stood there without the armor of corporate perfection. No suit, no boardroom confidence. He wore a plain black sweater, sleeves pushed up, revealing the tension in his forearms and something unguarded in his eyes, something almost fragile. Lila stepped aside and he walked in quietly, his presence filling the space with an unsettling familiarity like he belonged in rooms he had never entered. She closed the door behind them, feeling her breath tighten. "You should not be here," she said. He met her gaze. "I know. Then why are you?" "Because you asked questions and I gave you half answers. Because danger is circling again. Because I cannot stop thinking about you." The raw honesty caught her off guard. He looked around the small apartment, taking in the sketches pinned on the wall, the mismatched pillows, the plant she had kept alive for 3 years. His expression softened almost painfully. "This is what life looks like without shadows," he murmured. She frowned. Do you talk like that all the time? Only when I am telling the truth. She swallowed. Why are you really here? Ethan hesitated for the first time since she met him. She realized he was not searching for the right thing to say, he was deciding whether he was allowed to say it. He finally spoke. They tried to corner me tonight, in the parking garage. Her stomach dropped. Are you hurt? No. My security intervened faster than expected, but it was a warning. They wanted me to know they could get close. Lila stepped closer without thinking, drawn by instinct, worry, fear, something deeper. Are you safe now? His eyes flicked to hers. For the moment. And you? She blinked. Me. His jaw tightened. I cannot control what they do, but I can control where I put myself. After a long breath, he stepped closer, closing the space between them, slowly giving her time to pull away. She did not. He reached up and gently brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was light, but it sent a tremor through her. Leela, he said quietly, I came here because I needed to be somewhere that was not calculated. Someplace where I did not have to watch every angle. Someplace human. She felt her pulse thud in her throat. You came here to feel human, yes. The single word landed like a confession. She moved past him and gestured toward the sofa. Sit. You look like you have been carrying a war on your shoulders. His lips lifted at that, but he obeyed, sinking into the cushions like someone unlearning how to rest. She sat across from him, but he looked at her with so much emotion it felt like gravity pulling her closer. He spoke first. When I was younger, I trusted the wrong people. I believed loyalty mattered. I believed the board would protect the company. I was wrong. His voice shifted softer, more jagged. When the scandal hit, they made me a scapegoat. The only way to protect the people dragged into it was to disappear. The world forgot me. They preferred the headline that said, Ethan Blackwell vanished under investigation. Lila felt something twist in her chest. You carried all of that alone. His gaze lifted to hers. Until now, she exhaled shakily. Why tell me all this? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced. Because someone told you stories about me today. Someone wanted you to doubt your place around me. Lila stilled. Madison mentioned someone approached her. They said a woman betrayed you, used you, took your money. Ethan's expression hardened. A fabricated scandal. A tool the board used to control the narrative. She was paid to lie. Lila's breath stilled. Why would they weaponize something like that? Because people believe the worst version of a billionaire faster than the truth. He lifted his head, eyes fixed on her. I did not want you thinking I see you the way they tried to frame that story. You are not leverage. You are not a liability. You are not something they can use against me without consequences. Lila felt her heart crack open at the fierce sincerity in his voice. She whispered, Ethan, this is too much. He shook his head slowly. No. It is the first honest moment I have had in 5 years. Something in her melted, and before she could think, she moved to sit beside him, not touching, but close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. His breath caught as if the proximity stunned him. She asked softly, What do you need right now? He looked at her like the question itself was a gift. I need to not be the Empire for a moment. I need to be the man you kissed at the bar. She felt her cheeks burn. That was an accident. His voice dipped lower. Then tell me this. If it were not a dare, would you still have done it? She inhaled sharply. He held her gaze as if the answer mattered more than anything else in his world. Tell me the truth, Lila. Her voice broke in a whisper. I might have. Something in his expression shattered, then reformed softer and unbearably human. He lifted his hand slowly, giving her time to stop him, but she did not. He cupped her cheek with aching gentleness, his thumb brushing her skin like he was memorizing the moment. Lila, he whispered, you are the first person to make these walls crack. She leaned into his touch, drawn by a warmth she could not fight. Ethan's forehead lowered until it rested lightly against hers. Not a kiss, not a claim, just a quiet surrender. Two people breathing the same fragile air. No shadows, no empire, no danger. Just them. The moment stretched full of unspoken meaning, until Ethan pulled back with a breath that trembled faintly. "I will leave, before I stay too long," he murmured, but his eyes lingered on her like he was struggling to walk away. She walked him to the door, heart pounding. At the threshold he turned one last time, his voice a soft promise. "This is not over." Then he disappeared into the hallway and Lila closed the door, leaning against it, breathless, stunned, unable to believe how the night had unraveled. The walls around him had finally fallen, and she had been the one he chose to fall with. By morning, the fragile warmth of the night before had dissolved into something colder, something sharper, as if the world had sensed a vulnerability in Ethan and moved quickly to exploit it. Lila woke to her phone vibrating non-stop. At first she thought it was Madison or Gail, but when she blinked her eyes open and looked at the screen, she froze. Dozens of notifications, messages, missed calls, unknown numbers, headlines, articles. Her stomach plummeted. She opened one link and felt the air leave her lungs. Billionaire heir Ethan Blackwell. Spotted leaving apartment of unknown woman. Another article showed a blurred photo taken from across the street the night before. Her building, her entrance. A dark silhouette that could only be Ethan stepping into the light just long enough for someone watching to snap a picture. She sat upright, heart racing. Oh no, 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 no. Her phone buzzed again. Madison sent a barrage of texts. "Lila, what happened? Why is your building everywhere? Is this you? Did you actually date him? Tell me I'm not crazy." Lila's fingers shook as she typed, "I do not know. Call you later." She stood on numb legs, barely managing to get dressed for work. When she stepped outside her apartment, she noticed two things immediately. A person pretending to walk their dog but looking at her too long through sunglasses, and a car parked across the street with a passenger taking a photo with a telephoto lens. Her breath hitched. She pulled her jacket tighter and hurried down the sidewalk, feeling the eerie echo of Ethan's warning. "Anyone I show interest in becomes a target." She had not believed it fully. Now she wished she had. At the studio, the atmosphere was already tense. Conversations cut off abruptly as she entered. A few co-workers stared openly. Gail approached immediately, concern and exhaustion etched onto her face. "Lila, come into my office." "Now." She followed silently. Gail shut the door, then turned, holding her glasses in her hand. "I need you to tell me the truth. Are you involved with Ethan Blackwell?" Lila swallowed. "It is complicated." Gail let out a breath, equal parts frustration and worry. "Lila, this company cannot afford scandal. We are pitching to his board in less than a week. If they think we are compromised, we lose everything." Lila pressed her palms together, trying to steady herself. "I did not plan any of this. I met him by accident." Gail stared at her as if evaluating whether she was telling the truth. Then she said the words that felt like a punch. "You need to lay low. Stay out of sight. You should not come to the Blackwell Tower today." Lila stiffened. "I am still on the project. Not today, you are not. It is for your safety and for ours." Lila nodded, feeling a hollow ache open in her chest. She left the office and returned to her desk, but the weight of unwanted eyes made her skin crawl. Throughout the morning, emails flooded in from anonymous accounts. "You gold digger. Fame chaser. Home wrecker." Someone even attached a photo of Ethan talking to her in the tower, taken from a distance, clearly meant to look intimate. Her fingers trembled on the mouse. The worst part was not the hate itself. It was how fast it spread, how instantly strangers turned her into a villain. Around noon, she stepped outside for air, but the moment she walked through the door, someone snapped a photo. She instinctively shielded her face and hurried around the block. She ended up in a small cafe, sitting at a corner table, trying not to cry. A soft voice interrupted her. "Rough morning." She looked up and saw a woman in her late 30s holding a coffee cup. She sat at the next table and leaned toward Lila. "You do not know me, but I recognize the look. They are tearing you apart online." Lila felt her throat tighten. Why? I did not do anything, the woman sighed. It is not about what you did. It is about who he is. People like the Blackwells do not date normal people, and when they do, the world wants to punish the one who is not wealthy. Lila stared down at her drink, fighting the wave of fear rising in her chest. The woman placed a soft hand on the table near Lila's. Be careful. The attention is only going to get worse before it gets better. As she stood to leave, she added quietly, almost like an omen, some people will try to use you to get to him. Lila's breath shuddered. Use her. Hurt her. Destroy her livelihood. All because she kissed the wrong man, or the right man. She did not know anymore. By the time she left the cafe, her phone buzzed again, but this time the name made her heart lurch. Ethan, she answered with shaky breath. Lila. His voice was low, tighter than usual. You need to come to my office, now. Her chest tightened. Is something wrong? His silence answered everything. 15 minutes later, she arrived at the Blackwell Tower, but instead of going through the main lobby, security guided her through a private entrance down a hallway and into a restricted elevator. When the doors opened, Ethan was waiting alone. Arms crossed, expression dark enough to steal the breath from her lungs. He stepped forward instantly, eyes scanning her face. Are you all right? Did anyone touch you? She shook her head, voice barely steady. Just photos, and messages, and people staring. And Gail pulled me off the project. Ethan's jaw clenched. This is exactly what they wanted. She blinked. Who? The board. The ones pushing back against my return. They leaked the story. They tried to paint you as my liability. Lila took a shaky breath. Why would they do that? Because if they can scare you away, they think they can break me. He moved closer, the storm in his eyes softening into something that made her pulse trip. But they do not know you. They do not know you are not someone who breaks easily. She whispered, Ethan, I do not know if I can handle this. The world is tearing me apart and they do not even know me. He cupped her face gently, thumbs brushing her cheeks with unexpected tenderness. I will handle the world. You only have to handle me. Her breath caught. His voice dropped quieter. I told you, Lila. Anyone I care about becomes a target. And yes, I care. His confession wrapped around her heart like a force she could not fight. But before she could say anything, the door burst open and 2 advisors rushed in, pale and anxious. Mr. Blackwell, we have a situation. Another leak. Bigger this time. Ethan's expression turned cold. What now? They pushed a tablet toward him. A headline blared across the screen. Ethan Blackwell's secret girlfriend, who is she and how much is she costing him? Lila felt sick. Ethan's voice cut through the air, dark and lethal. Enough. They will not touch her again. The advisors exchanged nervous glances. Sir, how will you stop them? Ethan turned to Lila, his gaze steady, fierce, filled with something that looked like decision. The only way I know how, by choosing her publicly. Her breath froze in her chest. Choose her, publicly. Before she could react, Ethan stepped closer, speaking with a calm that shook her more than anger ever could. If they want to use you against me, I will remove their weapon. You will not be a scandal. You will be mine. His words were not a demand. They were a vow, a promise, a warning. And the moment they left his mouth, Lila understood something in her life had changed forever. Lila did not remember leaving Ethan's office. One moment she was staring at him as he said, "You will be mine," with a certainty that shook her to her bones, and the next she was outside the tower walking without seeing, thinking without breathing. His words chased her down the sidewalk louder than the city around her. "You will not be a scandal. You will be mine." It was too much, too fast, too dangerous. The world had already begun tearing her apart, and she could not imagine what would happen if he actually claimed her in public. She moved through downtown Austin in a daze until she reached the pedestrian bridge over Lady Bird Lake. She leaned against the railing, gripping the metal as if it were the only thing holding her up. She whispered into the wind, "I cannot do this." Her phone vibrated again and again. Madison. Gail. Unknown numbers. She turned it off. She needed to think without pressure, without noise, without the gravity of Ethan's gaze bending her world into shapes she did not understand. For the first time since she met him, she let herself imagine what her life could become if she stayed in whatever this was. Paparazzi on her street, cameras outside her building, strangers judging her worth, colleagues questioning her loyalty, her career collapsing under the weight of a billionaire's interest. And worse, the danger that surrounded him, the shadows he carried with him, the men following him, the eyes watching her building. She whispered, "I cannot become collateral damage in someone else's war." The sun sank lower, painting the water orange. Her pulse would not calm. By the time she walked home, night had fallen, and she felt watched again, though she could not tell if it was real or her fear turning everything into a threat. She shut the apartment door behind her and pressed her forehead against it, trying to breathe. Silence wrapped around her, and she felt something crack inside her chest. She sank to the floor, feeling the full weight of the past few days finally crush her. Everything she had built, everything she had dreamed, everything she had wanted for her life was being pulled under by a man she barely knew, but felt impossibly drawn to. She whispered a truth she did not want to admit. If I stay, I lose myself. And if she stayed long enough, she feared she might lose more than that. The next morning, she woke with a decision that felt like grief. She packed a small bag, threw on a hoodie, and left her apartment before sunrise. She did not go to work. She did not go anywhere she normally would. Instead, she crossed the city on foot, stopping only when she reached a quiet neighborhood she sometimes visited for sketching inspiration, a place where no one would think to look for her. She found a small park bench beneath a sprawling oak tree, sat down, pulled her knees to her chest, and let herself breathe for the first time in hours. She turned on her phone long enough to send 2 messages. One to Gail. "I need a personal day, not feeling well, will check in tomorrow." And one to Ethan. "I need space. Do not look for me." She stared at the message for a long moment before pressing send. The instant it delivered, her chest tightened like something inside her had snapped. Minutes passed quietly, then an hour, and another. She wondered if Ethan had seen the message. She wondered how he would react, but mostly she wondered if she had just broken something neither of them would be able to repair. Around noon, she bought coffee at a small bakery and sat at a corner booth hidden from the windows. She tried to sketch, but the pencil kept slipping in her trembling hand. She kept seeing Ethan's face the night he told her the truth. His eyes dark with exhaustion and something painfully vulnerable. She kept remembering how he looked at her like she was the only light left in a world full of shadows. And she kept telling herself she was doing the right thing by stepping away. She had to. She could not let herself drown in the gravity of someone else's war, but even as she repeated the thought, it felt like a lie. She lasted until evening before the guilt hit like a hard wave. Her phone buzzed. A single message from an unknown encrypted number. "You told my men not to contact you. I am respecting that. But tell me you are safe." Her heart squeezed. He had not sent a storm of messages. He had not sent threats or pleas. Just one question filled with quiet worry. She started typing a reply but stopped. She did not trust herself to say anything without unraveling. She powered off the phone. That night, she wandered the streets alone, unable to calm her mind. The world felt muted without the constant pull of his presence, but it also felt emptier, like she had unplugged herself from something she was not ready to lose. By the next morning, Austin news networks were buzzing with headlines about Ethan's increasingly unstable return to the company. Commentators speculated that he was distracted, losing control, not attending key meetings. Lila stared at the headlines, cold dread creeping up her spine. He was unraveling, because of her. Hours later, she learned the truth from a short, frantic call from Madison. "Lila, what did you do?" "Ethan Blackwell canceled 3 meetings. The board is in chaos. Investors are panicking. They said he looks sick. Lack of sleep. He keeps walking out of rooms like he is looking for someone." Lila felt her breath disappear. He was looking for her. Madison kept going, and someone on the board is trying to take control while he is distracted. A vice president or something. They are calling it a weakening of leadership. They think he is losing his edge. Lila sat down hard on the sidewalk. She had broken something far larger than she realized. She whispered to herself, I did not want to hurt him, but she had. More than she ever intended. That evening, as she crossed a quiet street, she saw something out of the corner of her eye, a man in a dark jacket standing near a lamppost talking softly into an earpiece. Her pulse spiked. Another man lingered across the road, pretending to read a newspaper. She was being watched. Fear wrapped around her chest. She realized her disappearance had not protected Ethan. It had made things worse. It had pushed him into the exact vulnerability his enemies wanted. The moment that truth crashed into her, she felt her knees weaken. She could not run from this. She could not run from him. But before she could even think about going back to him, before she could decide anything else, before she could draw a full breath, she heard a voice behind her, familiar, steady, and filled with quiet devastation. Lila. She turned slowly. Ethan stood a few steps away, looking like he had not slept in days, eyes dark with exhaustion, shirt wrinkled as if thrown on in a rush. His voice cracked just slightly. Why did you disappear? The break between them had begun, and now it threatened to destroy them both. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Ethan stood in the glow of the street lamp, looking like a man who had been dragged through storm after storm with no shelter left. His shoulders were rigid, but his eyes held nothing but exhaustion and something deeper, something wounded. Lila felt her breath catch painfully. She had never seen him like this, not even when he talked about the shadows in his life, the betrayals, the enemies. Seeing him now shattered the last of her distance. She whispered, Ethan, I had to step away. I thought it would protect you. His expression tightened with disbelief and hurt. Protect me. By disappearing. By cutting me off without a word. Lila took a step back, overwhelmed by the intensity in his gaze. You said anyone close to you becomes a target. I could not let that be me. I could not let them use me against you. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment as if steadying himself. When he opened them, a low ache lived in his voice, and instead, you let them use my fear against me. She swallowed the guilt rising hard in her throat. I thought distance was safer. Ethan shook his head, a small, sharp motion. For who? She said it softly, but the word broke something in him. He stepped closer but kept a careful space between them, his voice rough like he had scraped it raw, trying not to fall apart in her absence. Do you know what happened when you vanished? Do you know what I became? She stared at him, chest tightening. No? Tell me. His jaw twitched. I stopped sleeping. I could not focus in meetings. I kept thinking someone took you, that someone hurt you because of me. Lila's breath caught. Ethan. His voice rose just slightly, not in anger, but in fear. You do not get to disappear from my life without warning. Not after everything that has happened, not when people are circling like wolves waiting for me to break. She felt tears sting her eyes, but she blinked them back. I thought I was the crack they could use to break you. Ethan's voice dropped into something quieter, something that trembled faintly. You are the reason I am still standing. The simplicity of it struck her harder than any argument. He took a slow breath, chest rising with the weight of his next confession. While you were gone, the board moved against me. She stiffened. What do you mean, moved? They held an emergency session. They questioned my stability. They claimed I was too distracted to lead. She felt cold all over, because of me, because I walked away. Ethan didn't dispute it. Instead, he held her gaze with a steadiness that made her knees go weak. The vice president Calder Pierce tried to force a confidence vote. He thinks the company should be his. He thinks disappearing for 5 years made me unfit. Lila felt dread settle in her stomach. What happened? Ethan's eyes hardened. I fought. I pushed back. But I could not win while tearing myself apart, wondering if you were safe. She felt her heart fracture. She had tried to do the right thing and somehow made everything worse. She whispered, I am sorry. I never meant to hurt you. His breath came out uneven. I know. That is the worst part. You were trying to save me, and you almost destroyed me anyway. The honesty cut through her. She stepped closer, just a few inches. Ethan, she murmured, tell me what I can do. For a moment he looked away toward the river, the quiet stretch of water reflecting the city lights. Then he turned back to her with a calm that felt like the eye of a hurricane. Tell me the truth first. She swallowed. The truth? He nodded. Why did you run? Not the reasons you think I want to hear, not what will make sense to the world. Tell me the truth for me. Her voice trembled. I was scared. Of them, of the danger, of losing my career, of being turned into a scandal, of everything happening so fast I could not breathe. Then more quietly. But mostly, I was scared because I felt too much too soon. His expression softened in a way she had never seen before, all steel and armor melting into something painfully human. He stepped closer until their breaths mingled. And you think I did not. His voice barely above a whisper. When you kissed me, something in my life snapped into place. I have not been able to stop thinking about you from that moment on. Her heart pounded so hard she thought he could hear it. Ethan continued, voice steady but threaded with emotion. I went to the board today. I told them they will not use you against me. I told them their smear campaign ends now, or I walk and take 1/3 of the company with me. Lila gasped. Would you really leave your own empire? His answer came without hesitation. If staying meant letting them destroy you, yes. The force of that truth shook her. She searched his face for exaggeration but saw none. He meant every word. The company is rotten in places, he said quietly. Places that grew stronger while I was gone. I came back to fix that, and they will do anything to stop me. Her pulse raced. Even hurt people close to you. His jaw tightened, especially them. And then he said words that sent a chill down her spine. They want to bankrupt the community housing fund. They want to push out lower-income families and sell the land to private equity. It is corruption at the highest level. Her shock was immediate. And you are the only one stopping them. Ethan nodded. And now that they sense weakness, they are making their move. She whispered, terrified. What can you do? He stepped closer, his eyes burning with a fire she had not seen before. I am going to expose everything. Every illegal deal, every forged signature, every offshore account Pierce and his allies used to bleed the company for profit. She stared at him in disbelief. That could destroy them. That could destroy you. Ethan's expression hardened. Only if I do it alone. The implication hit her like a second impact. You need me. His voice softened into something that felt like a hand reaching for hers. I do not need you to fight my battles. I need you to stand beside me so I do not lose myself while fighting them. She felt her breath shudder. Ethan lowered his head slightly until his forehead almost touched hers, but he stopped just short of crossing the line, respecting her space even now. His voice was a whisper against the night air. I do not care what the world thinks. I care what you think. I care if you stay. Tears gathered, but she blinked them away, her lips parting on a fragile breath. Ethan. I am scared. He nodded. So am I. They stood there suspended between fear and truth and something deeper that neither could deny anymore. Finally she whispered, What do we do now? Ethan's answer came with quiet fire. We burn their lies to the ground, and we do it together. The next morning arrived heavier than any dawn Lila had ever lived through. Austin's skyline glowed pale gold, but inside the Blackwell Tower storm clouds were gathering in conference rooms, hallways, and board chambers. The emergency board meeting had been scheduled for 9 sharp. By 8:30, the building swarmed with executives, reporters, assistants, investors, all whispering the same questions. Was Ethan losing control? Was the empire about to fracture? And who was the woman at the heart of the scandal? Lila stood across the street, her pulse trembling through her body as she watched the towering glass building radiate tension. She had barely slept. She had replayed her conversation with Ethan over and over, hearing the raw truth in his voice, the way he said, I care. The way he said, I need you to stand beside me." Her fear battled with something stronger, something that made her chest ache. Choice. He had not demanded anything. He had not cornered her. He had simply told her the truth and asked for hers. Now she stood on the edge of a decision that could break or rebuild both of them. When she finally moved, it felt like stepping into her own courage for the first time in her life. She crossed the street, walked through the rotating doors, and into a lobby that fell eerily silent the moment she entered. People recognized her from the photos from the leaked articles from the Whispers. Lila Hart, the unknown girl, the scandal. She lifted her chin, ignoring the stares, and walked straight toward the private elevator the one security had led her through before. 2 guards stepped forward, but one of them froze, recognizing her, Miss Hart. His voice held surprise and something like respect. He stepped aside. The elevator doors slid shut behind her, and for a moment she closed her eyes, breathing in deeply. Whatever happened next, she would not run again. When the doors opened, she stepped into the corridor outside the boardroom and heard raised voices inside. She hesitated only a second before pushing the door open. Conversation shattered instantly. 12 of the most powerful men in Texas turned to stare at her. At the far end of the long table, Ethan stood rigid as stone jaw, clenched hands braced on the surface as if holding himself together by force. His suit looked immaculate, but his eyes gave him away. Exhaustion, fear, and when he saw her, something else. Relief so sharp it almost broke him. Lila's breath caught. Calder Pierce, the vice president who had been circling Ethan like a vulture, straightened with a smirk. "And who is this?" he asked with smug malice. "The reason you are unfit to lead." Ethan's gaze snapped to Pierce, his voice cutting like steel. "Do not speak to her." Pierce stepped forward, ignoring him. "Miss Hart is it. Welcome to the meeting that may end the Blackwell dynasty." Lila felt dozens of eyes drilling into her, but she did not waver. Instead, she walked forward until she stood beside Ethan, the 2 of them forming a united line at the head of the table. Ethan's breath hitched like he could not quite believe she had come. Lila looked up at him and whispered so quietly only he could hear, "I am here. I choose this. I choose you." Something in him cracked open. The room watched their silence like it was an earthquake. Then she turned to face the board as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. "You think he is weak because of me?" she said. Voice steady even as her heart pounded. "You think caring makes him unfit to lead?" Pierce scoffed. "It is not caring, it is recklessness. His judgment is compromised. His focus is gone." Lila lifted her chin. "Is it compromised to protect people rather than destroy them?" Some board members shifted uncomfortably. She continued, voice gaining strength. "You think he lost his edge? But the truth is, he is the only one in this room with the courage to challenge your corruption." A ripple swept through the table. Pierce slammed a hand on the wood. "You know nothing about this company." Lila held his gaze unwavering. "I know enough. I know about the community housing fund you are quietly trying to dismantle. I know about the offshore accounts, the forged signatures, the illegal transfers hidden between acquisitions." Pierce's face drained of color. Ethan stared at her, stunned. Lila pressed on. "I know because Ethan came back to fix what you broke, not to maintain your lies." Murmurs erupted around the room. Several board members exchanged sharp, uneasy glances. A few leaned forward, suddenly curious. Pierce sputtered ridiculous. "None of that can be proven." Ethan finally spoke, his voice steady, lethal, and suddenly powerful in a way that rippled through the room. "It can. And it will." He reached into a folder on the table and slid out a stack of documents. Bank statements, letters, emails, transaction logs, everything. Gasps spread through the room. One board member stood up trembling. "Is this real?" Ethan nodded. "And that is only a fraction. More evidence is being delivered as we speak." Pierce's face flushed with panic. "You cannot expose this. It will destroy the company." Ethan's gaze sharpened. "It will save it." Another board member hesitated, then said quietly, "We have been misled." Pierce glared at him. Sit down." But for the first time, the board was not listening to Pierce. They were listening to Ethan. And to her. Lila swallowed hard and stepped closer to Ethan, her voice softer but carrying across the room. "You all assumed I was his weakness, but you never once considered I might be his witness, nor that he might finally be done letting you drag this company into the dark." One of the senior board members cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwell, do you intend to push a motion of removal?" Ethan nodded once. "Calder Pierce and his allies will be removed effective immediately." The room erupted into arguments, protests, shock. But in the chaos, Ethan leaned slightly toward her, whispering just loud enough for her alone. "You came back." She met his eyes and whispered, "I could not let them break you." His voice softened with something breathtaking. "They could never break me. But you leaving almost did." Before she could speak, one of the board members banged a gavel, calling the room to order. A vote must be held. The decision was swift. Calder Pierce lost. Ethan won. And in the stunned silence that followed, Ethan reached for Lila's hand right there in front of the entire board, his fingers closing around hers with quiet certainty. No scandal, no shame, no hesitation, just truth. The moment their hands touched the room, watch the man they thought they could destroy stand taller than he had in years. Lila felt electricity surge through her chest, and in that instant, she understood the depth of what she had chosen. She stepped closer to him, letting her shoulder brush his the smallest, boldest declaration. "I am not running," she whispered. "Not now. Not ever." Ethan exhaled like the world finally let him breathe again. His thumb brushed the back of her hand, once gentle, deliberate, filled with gratitude and something dangerously close to love. Then he turned to the board and spoke with the calm power of a man who had reclaimed his empire. "This is the woman you tried to use against me, and she is the reason I am standing here today." Lila's heart clenched. The room was silent. For the first time since this war began, Ethan Blackwell was not fighting alone. And the moment she stepped beside him was the moment everything changed. The boardroom emptied slowly after the vote, but the echo of the decision lingered like a pulse in the air, a tectonic shift that everyone felt even if they did not fully comprehend it. Ethan stood still for a long moment, his hand still wrapped around Lila's as if letting go might undo everything they had just fought for. She felt the warmth of his palm, the steady grounding pressure, the silent promise in the way his thumb brushed her knuckles. When the last board member finally left the room, a hush settled between them, deep and full of things neither had said aloud yet. Ethan turned toward her fully, his expression no longer guarded, no longer weighed down by the shadows that had chased him for years. For the first time since she met him, he looked free. Lila exhaled softly, breaking the silence. "You just changed the direction of an entire empire." His lips curved faintly. "We changed it." She looked down shyly, feeling the overwhelming swirl of relief and disbelief and something gentler blooming in her chest. She didn't know if she deserved any credit, but the way he looked at her made her feel like she did. Ethan lifted her hand to his chest, holding it there lightly, as if testing whether she would pull away. She didn't. His voice dropped into something warm, quiet, and overwhelmingly sincere. "You came back for me." She swallowed, trying to steady the tremble in her breath. "I came back because I could not watch them tear you apart." He stepped closer until the faint scent of his cologne wrapped around her like a memory she hadn't lived yet. "And because of what you feel," he murmured. Her cheeks warmed, but she didn't deny it. "Because of what we both feel," she whispered. His chest rose sharply at that. A moment stretched long, fragile, intimate. Then slowly, as if afraid to break the air between them, he reached up and cupped her cheek, his palm warm against her skin. Lila closed her eyes, instinctively leaning into the touch. She felt his breath brush her forehead before he spoke again, voice nearly a whisper. "I want to take you somewhere. Somewhere ours." She opened her eyes. "Where?" The faintest smile touched his lips. "The place where you changed my life without meaning to." She knew instantly. Within minutes they were in an elevator descending through the tower. They exited into the garage and he guided her to a sleek black car, but this time there were no mysterious shadows waiting. No tense energy around them, only calm, purposeful movement. Ethan held the passenger door open, watching her with a softness that made her heart squeeze before he closed it gently and walked around to the driver's side. They drove in comfortable silence through the evening streets of Austin until familiar neon lights came into view. The Rusty Lantern, the bar where she had impulsively changed both their lives. He parked a few spaces away from the entrance and cut the engine. For a moment, neither moved. The air between them felt charged with quiet memory. Lila looked at him with a small smile. "I still cannot believe I kissed you in there." Ethan turned in his seat, eyes softening in a way that struck her deeply. "And I still cannot believe how much that single moment altered everything." He reached for her hand, brushing his fingers over her knuckles in slow, thoughtful strokes. "I came here the night after you disappeared," he admitted. "I sat at the same bar stool, listened to the same jazz, and realized how empty the world felt without you in it." Her breath caught. "Ethan." He shook his head gently, not as protest but as acknowledgement of something that had hurt both of them. "I do not blame you for running. The world around me is sharp, heavy, difficult to survive in even for me. I cannot imagine how it felt from your side." Lila stared down at their intertwined hands, voice quiet. "I was scared, but leaving you felt worse than anything I was afraid of." His grip tightened just slightly. Warm, steady, certain. "Then stay," he whispered. "Do not run again. Not from me, not from this." She looked up into his eyes and something in her chest settled fully for the first time in days. "I am here now. I am breathing again now." He exhaled shakily, like her words had loosened something long locked inside him. "Come inside with me," he murmured. "Not because of a dare, because we choose it this time." Lila nodded, and they stepped out of the car, walking together toward the entrance of the bar that had unknowingly written the first line of their story. The jazz music drifted softly through the doorway as they entered. People turned briefly, but no one recognized them, no cameras, no whispers, no chaos. Just a bar and a memory waiting to be rewritten. Ethan led her to the exact stool he had sat on that night. She laughed softly. "You really were a statue that night." He huffed a quiet, amused breath. "I was stunned. Most people avoid me, or use me. You just walked up to me, kissed me, and ran. I did not know what to do except breathe again." She felt her heart twist at the confession. She sat beside him and rested her elbow on the counter. "Tell me something honestly. If it had not been a dare, would you have wanted me to kiss you?" His eyes darkened with a warmth that sent heat down her spine. "Yes. From the moment you walked into the bar." She blinked, startled. "You noticed me before the dare." "I noticed you the second you stepped inside. You looked like someone who felt the world too deeply, someone who did not belong in the shadows I live in." But she whispered, "You did not even move when I kissed you." His lips curved slightly. "I did not want to scare you away." She laughed, quietly shaking her head. "It is impossible to scare me away now." Ethan stilled for a moment, as if letting her words sink into the parts of him that had forgotten what hope felt like, and slowly he reached out and placed his hand at the side of her neck, thumb brushing her jaw, a gesture so tender her breath caught. "Lila," he said softly, without rush, without urgency. "If everything fell apart tomorrow, if the board stripped my title, if the world kept screaming, would you still choose me?" She leaned toward him, the weight of her answer steady and certain. "I am not choosing the empire. I am choosing the man beneath it." Ethan inhaled sharply. Then he closed the small distance between them, pressing his forehead to hers in a gesture both intimate and grounding. When their lips met, the kiss was nothing like the accidental startled brush from their first encounter. This one was slow, deliberate, full of emotion that neither of them had dared name out loud until now. A kiss built on truth, not fear. Choice, not chaos. A quiet beginning, not a dare. When they finally parted, Ethan whispered against her lips a confession that felt like a breath he had been holding for years. "You are the first thing in a long time that feels real." Lila smiled softly, brushing her thumb along his cheek. "So are you." Outside the bar, the world kept spinning full of noise and danger and unknown futures. But inside that small glowing space under warm lights and soft jazz, their love finally had room to breathe. And for the first time, neither of them felt alone in the fight ahead. 1 year later, Austin glowed beneath a soft spring evening sky, the kind of warm light that made the city look gold at the edges. The skyline shimmered with new projects rising from the horizon, many of them stamped with the bold emblem of Blackwell New Vision, the initiative Ethan built from the ashes of the old empire. It was a program dedicated to community housing sustainability and long-term urban renewal. And at the center of its design studio stood Lila Hart. She stepped out of her office, smoothing the front of her tailored navy dress, her ID badge clipped beside a small pin that read, Head of Design, Community Housing Division. Sometimes she still stared at that title for a few seconds, wondering how her life had turned from temporary positions and canceled projects to leading designs that would reshape entire neighborhoods. Ethan had offered her the position only after she proved herself in months of intense planning reviews, presentations, and site studies. He refused to let their relationship be the reason she succeeded. She refused to let their relationship diminish what she earned. They fought, they compromised, they learned, and they built a system together that did not rely on favoritism, but on vision and purpose. Now, she stood in the middle of the newest headquarters wing watching designers buzz around layouts, foam models, and virtual mock-ups. Ethan was somewhere upstairs preparing for the annual Texas Impact Gala, the largest charity event in the state. She would meet him there, but he insisted she arrive on her own as a leader, not as an accessory. It made her smile thinking about how carefully he protected her independence even when half the world assumed she was the reason he had transformed into a different kind of billionaire. By 7, she stepped into a rideshare and stared out the window at Austin, flashing by the winding river. The humming bridges, the towering buildings she once thought belonged only to the elite. The car slid to a stop in front of a grand hotel entrance where photographers crowded the walkway. Flashes burst like fireworks each time a celebrity politician or philanthropist stepped onto the carpet. Lila took a breath and climbed out. A murmur went through the crowd as cameras recognized her, but not with the same frenzy from a year ago. This time, the whispers were softer, admiring. The woman who stood by Ethan Blackwell, the designer changing the city. She moved through the carpet with quiet confidence. When she reached the top of the steps, the ballroom doors opened, revealing a sweeping space full of warm light crystal chandeliers and hundreds of guests dressed in their finest. But Lila's attention found only one person. Ethan stood near the stage speaking with city leaders in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt, and no tie. A deliberate choice that made him look approachable without losing authority. When he saw her, his conversation faded instantly. His expression changed, softened, cracked open with warmth. Happiness, something deeper. He excused himself and walked toward her, each step sure and steady. When he reached her, he took her hands, gently lifting them as if greeting someone he had been waiting for all night. "You look like you belong to every bright thing in this room," he said quietly. "And you look like you built half of them," she teased. He smiled, the private kind that existed only for her. They moved together toward their table, mingling, shaking hands, taking photos. They were no longer a scandal or a whispered rumor. They were a story of transformation, one that business schools wrote about and local reporters followed with genuine pride. The program that had once drawn backlash now received national attention, and tonight they would announce the newest funding extension for low-income housing in East Austin. Their table sat in the center of the room, offering a perfect view of the stage. Lila watched Ethan from the corner of her eye, the way he carried himself with calm strength, the way people leaned in to hear him, the way he squeezed her hand under the table before standing for his speech. A hush settled across the ballroom. Ethan approached the podium, adjusting the microphone slightly. "Thank you," he began, voice steady, resonating through the hall. Tonight, we celebrate growth not just in business but in people, in vision, in courage." His eyes drifted to Lila for a moment, and she felt the air catch in her chest. A year ago, this company faced collapse from within. We had lost our way. But in losing our way, we found a new one built not on profit alone, but on purpose, community, and transparency. The audience nodded, some applauding lightly. Ethan glanced at her again, but this time it was not subtle. "Tonight, we also honor the person who reminded me what leadership really means. Someone who stood with me when standing was dangerous. Someone who saw the man, not the empire." Lila's cheeks burned, but her smile bloomed uncontrollably. Ethan continued. "She is the heart of our design division, the reason our housing projects are not just buildings, but homes." He gestured toward her, and the crowd applauded louder. Lila breathed deeply, gripping the edge of her chair. Ethan paused, letting the noise fade before adding softly, "And she changed my life on a night she did not even mean to." A ripple of laughter moved through the room. After the pledge announcements and donor acknowledgments, Ethan returned to the table, leaning down so only she could hear. "Walk with me." She followed him out of the ballroom onto a balcony overlooking the glowing city. The air was warm, laced with the scent of evening blossoms and distant music from the gala's jazz ensemble. Ethan stood beside her, hands braced on the railing, eyes on the skyline. "1 year," he murmured. "1 year since a dare I was supposed to ignore." She laughed quietly. "And you sat there like a wall." He turned to her, finally facing her fully. "Lila, I built towers across this country, but none of them compare to what we built together this year." He took her hands, lifting them to his chest where she could feel the steady beat beneath his shirt. "You made me better. You made this city better. You made my life something I did not even know I could feel again." Her heart tightened with warmth, tenderness, possibility. Ethan stepped closer, closing the little space between their bodies. "Do you regret any of it?" She looked up into his eyes, dark, warm, steady. Not a single moment. Relief washed through him, tangible. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Not the traditional shape of an engagement case, but something simpler, not flashy, deeply personal. Her breath froze. Ethan opened it, revealing a silver ring engraved inside with 2 small letters, RL. Rusty Lantern, the place where it all began. "Consider this," he whispered, "not a proposal, but a promise. A promise that every choice we make from here on will be ours, not forced by fear or power or expectation, but built on truth and on us." Tears stung her eyes. She took the ring with trembling fingers. Then she looked at him, smiling through emotion so full it felt like light. "Ethan, it is already destiny." He exhaled with the soft wonder, pulling her into his arms, holding her against the warm night air. As the city glittered beneath them, as music drifted from the ballroom, as their story settled into something solid and eternal. Lila rested her forehead against his chest and whispered, "Thank you for not running." Ethan kissed the top of her head, tightening his arms around her. "And thank you for daring to kiss me first." One dare, one moment, one spark, and it turned into the destiny neither of them knew they needed until it found them. If you are still here listening to Lila and Ethan's story, then maybe some part of their journey touched something in you, the part that believes in second chances. The part that knows love often comes from the most unexpected places. The part that hopes that even in a world full of pressure, noise, and fear, 2 people can still find each other and choose each other every single day. Before you leave, I want to talk to you for a moment because stories like this do not end when the video fades out. They live on in the people who hear them. They live on in the way we look at our own lives and wonder if maybe destiny is a little closer than we think. Maybe you have been Lila before, choosing courage even while your hands were shaking. Maybe you have been Ethan, standing in the middle of a storm, fighting battles no one else sees, hoping for one person who will understand you without conditions. Maybe you have been the friend watching someone you love step into something new, praying it will not break them. Or maybe you are still waiting for your own moment, your own spark, your own unexpected beginning. Wherever you are on your journey, thank you for spending this time here with me. These long stories only come alive because you sit with them, you feel them, you breathe through the quiet moments, the painful moments, the hopeful moments, and your presence here keeps this channel alive more than you could ever imagine. So if this story made your heart beat a little faster, or made you tear up, or made you smile softly at your screen, then please take a moment to show some love. Hit the like button. It tells YouTube that this kind of storytelling matters, and it helps this little corner of the internet grow bigger and stronger. And if you want to join our family here, truly join us, then make sure you subscribe. It is free. It takes 1 second, and it means you will never miss the next story, the next journey, the next world we build together. Every week, we create a new emotional universe, a new slow burn, a new twist, a new set of characters who fight through fear to choose love. And I would be honored to have you walking beside us for each one. And now, the part I love most, reading your comments. This channel is built on real people, from real places who show up with real hearts. So tell me where you are watching from right now. I want to hear you, and I want to talk to you. Are you in New York, or Texas, or California? Are you watching from the Philippines, or Kenya, or the islands, or somewhere quiet and small that most people never visit? Tell me your country, your state, your city, even your neighborhood if you want. Tell me what line in this story hit you the hardest. Was it the dare? Was it the moment she walked into the boardroom? Was it when Ethan finally breathed again because she came back? Tell me if you believe in destiny. Tell me if someone ever entered your life the way Lila entered his by accident, but changed everything anyway. And if you want to go even deeper, here is a question just for you. If you could dare yourself to do one brave thing this year, one thing that could change your life, even a little bit, what would it be? I want to read your answers. I want to talk to you in the comments the way we always do in this community. You are not just viewers here, you are the heartbeat of this channel. And lastly, if you want to support this channel even more, share this story with someone who might need hope tonight, someone who might need courage, someone who might need a reminder that life can still surprise them in beautiful ways. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing in love that grows slowly but deeply. Thank you for staying until the last word. Until the next story, this is Emma sending love from my little studio to wherever you are in the world.